Good morning, outlets, or afternoon, or whatever it is for you. It's morning for us.
It's morning here.
As always, it is morning, and oh my god, I'm so excited about this episode. If you have been paying attention to any of our past episodes, and for the record, if you haven't, you need to go to our past episodes page right now and go listen to them. Pause this. Yes, go listen to them and then come back to this one.
Right, which www.shamelessplugs.podcast.com is where you can find those episodes.
Yes.
Or SoundCloud.
They're on iTunes. They're on iTunes. They're on Stitcher. But I am so excited because if you've been paying any attention to this program over the months
whatsoever,
you would know that I am a movie junkie. And this episode, Shameless Plugs, goes to the movies.
Like, literally. No,
yes.
Not literally. But hey, if you ever watched our video on platforms, then you saw J.A. George go to the movies one time.
Yes, you did see me go to see Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, it was Thor. I was very excited. I really wish we had done J.A. George Goes to Infinity War, but...
Yeah, I don't know why we didn't do that. Oh, wait, yeah. Busy.
Yeah, yes, true. But it is summer blockbuster season.
Woo!
It is the most wonderful time of the year.
Woohoo!
Well, for me. You know.
For you. Yeah.
Samantha's not a movie person,
I'm
but
no.
for me, it is the most wonderful time of the year, and the season has kicked off with Infinity War, as we mentioned in our last episode, as I am mentioning right now. So we thought it would be a great time to do an episode devoted to movies.
Whee!
If you haven't checked it out yet, by the way, make sure to check us out on Twitter at Plugs Podcast, where we have started a new feature that is very much connected to the theme of this episode.
I'm dancing.
Yes, she is dancing. So, hashtag plug yourself. Writers out there, we want you to say nice things about yourself and your work and get excited and remind you of why you love writing. So, we want you to plug yourself on Twitter.
Talk about you. Talk about your work.
Yes.
Positivity makes things better, so have a positive moment in your day about something that
you love. So our first plug yourself is all about movies. We are going to be talking about The Thing. I don't want to give away what that thing is because
we can't give it away.
We want you to go to Twitter and check this out. But please join us. It's a hashtag game. It's fun. It is related to what we're going to be talking about this episode. So our inaugural plug yourself is about movies, and we will be posting a new one of these every week. So join in the fun. So I think we want to start, since if you're a writer, you have probably pictured your book being turned into a movie. A lot of us do that.
Yeah, we do.
I certainly do.
Yeah.
Who's going to bring that story to life for you, though? Who would you cast in your movie? A movie of it could be a short story. It could be a short film.
Yeah.
Short story, short film. It could be a novel turned into a full-length feature film. Yeah. Sundance.
I said a movie thing.
Yes, you did say a movie thing. So, let's start with you, Samantha.
Oh, dear.
Who would you cast in your movie? Who would you put in it? Why?
Yeah, in doing research for this little adventure, as Ja mentioned, I'm really not a movie person. I watch them. I enjoy them. I have movies that I like, but I really don't know people. I really don't pay attention to Hollywood, what people are doing. I don't read about movies before they come out. I barely even know what's in theaters except for Infinity War because I hear about it all the time.
Yes. Not just from me, for the record.
No, pretty much everywhere we go in the office. Have you seen
Yes.
Infinity War? Have you seen Infinity War?
Yes.
So I know that's in theaters, but yeah, so I really don't know much about it. That said, I have kind of thought of my stuff as movies before, just because it's kind of fun to think about it cinematically versus in my head. And sometimes for me, thinking about what it would look like in the world makes it a little easier to get through some descriptions and that kind of stuff. So I think it can also be a tool, but...
Completely agree with that. I do the same thing.
Yeah, so, but I guess we haven't really talked too much about... Or I haven't talked really too much about my novel, per se.
I don't think either of us have.
Yeah.
I kind of think that's by design to a certain extent. It certainly is on my part.
Yeah, same. But it is, so just, a little bit. It is futuristic. I'm kind of calling it a socio-sci-fi.
Oh, okay.
Ha! Look at that.
Yeah.
And so I casted 3 of my characters. My main character is a young man named Christopher. His mother, Madeline, plays a large role in the beginning of the novel, and then I also casted another character of mine, Rex, who plays a big role in Christopher's life after his accident happens. So, yeah.
Oh, Christopher has an accident. Interesting.
Teaser. Yes. So I picked 3 characters, and those are the ones I casted. So, and again, my research for this was, hey, I want my character to look this way, and these people look this way. I actually have no idea what their history is, or like what other things they've been in, except for what the internet told me. So, I apologize if, any of this goes awry.
Okay. All right.
So, for my main character, Christopher, I picked Lucas Hedges.
Okay. Anything you could tell us about Lucas and why he's the right fit? Appearance-wise, at least?
Yeah, so there was one image that really caught my eye. So my Christopher, like I teased, has an accident, and after this accident, he has a very specific look about him, like his hair and everything, and there was a picture of Lucas Hedges with like his hair almost shaved, and that was kind of like, that could work, because after the first chapter, that's kind of his look throughout the rest of the thing. So so I like that. I liked his face shape, the bone structure, kind of the eye shape, which is also really important for Christopher. So that's where he came from. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Again.
Okay.
I know nothing about him, but just visually, I was like.
By the name, I mean, I might have seen him in something, but from the name, I am not familiar with him, which I'm kind of surprised because I tend to know a decent number of actors and so on.
Yeah. So then his mom, I picked Cella Ward.
Okay.
Just again, You made a face.
No, I think it's Sela Ward.
Oh, is it? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We knew this was going to go downhill really fast.
It's fine. It's fine. I like her as an actress.
Sweet.
So,
cool. So, yeah. But, again, kind of that right age range, right...
Based on what I know of this character from what you've told me, I think she could pull that off, too, in terms of acting ability and personality and presence and everything.
Yeah,
so.
I just kind of, again, it just kind of worked, and she had the right face shape, the way that I saw it and everything. So, so that would be 2, and then this last one is actually really difficult for me because Rex is one of my favorite characters in the whole thing. He plays a really big role. He's, but he also is, and this kind of could lead into what you're going to talk about, but his look and his race is very specific. He's got a very specific... He's genetically engineered, so it's a very specific look. It's a very specific hair color, skin color, eye tone, and all of that. So I wanted to cast him because he's one of my favorites, but it was also kind of difficult. When I was looking at people, I was really looking at actually eye color and facial shape and body type, because he's real tall and narrow, but strong. So he's one of my favorites, and so when I was looking at it, I was waffling between 2 people, but I settled on Jack Abel.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So, again, height, eye color. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I think it would work really well. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, thank you for the segue, because
absolutely.
Race is very important to my story. For those of you who have not been to my website, we haven't talked about this specifically on air, but for those of you who have not been to my website, and even if you've been to my website, you might not have read my bio on there, but jageorgewriting.com, by the way. You should
check it out.
Pause the episode, go now, then come back.
Or, I mean, if you're on some kind of a computer device, you could listen to the episode and visit.
As you visit. Yeah. Just don't get distracted by my amazing prose and not listen to the episode.
It's true. It's very true. I mean,
it's easy to get lost in the dulcet tones of my writing, but whatever.
Yes. So. I mean, just listening to this podcast sometimes it's hard to turn it off.
I know.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is why we have a past episodes page so you can go track them all down and just keep listening, binge listen.
Yeah.
Anyway,
www.shamelessplugs.podcast.com.
Correct. So, for those of you who have not read the bio, though, I am multiracial. I am equal parts Greek and black. There are some other things in there as well, but those are the largest percentages of my genetic background. So, Greek and black. And I'm writing a superhero story, and it's very much inspired by the experience of being multiracial and feeling like you are part of multiple worlds, but you don't fully fit in any of them. That's a major theme in the story. Ostracization is kind of a theme of the story. So it is important that my main character is multiracial. I mean, they have to be because that's a major theme. The first and foremost, the goal of the story is to be entertaining. I am not trying to let the message overtake the entertainment. But by the same token, if I'm going to write something where my goal is entertainment, I don't want it to be brain dead entertainment. I want it to have a conscience. I want it to have some kind of meaning. So
absolutely,
the multiracial aspect is really important for my main character. So thinking about actors, so the irony here, in my opinion, is that I love movies. I do the things that you just said you don't do. I read about the behind-the-scenes stuff. I read about, why people were cast or why people who turn down roles. I read about movies before they come out. I avoid spoilers, but I read about the behind-the-scenes stuff. So, the irony here is that for as invested as I am and as interested as I am in those things, I think that makes it more difficult for me to cast the different roles.
Yeah.
Because, I study the way people... that sounds really pretentious, and I don't mean it in a pretentious way, but when I'm watching a movie...
I study the way people act.
That sounds super pretentious, and it's not what I meant. That came out completely wrong.
I can only appreciate a movie by studying the way that they approach the role.
Anyway, I pay attention to actors in different roles and whether or not they feel right for the part and whether or not I could picture them playing a different part. So it was actually really problematic for me to come up with my cast, and I haven't settled on individual people is the problem. So for my main character, Alex, again, being multiracial is really important. His delivery is also really important. He is very much a deadpan, dry, comedic quality to him, but he also has a certain level of intensity. So it's weird because kind of the closest actor I can find in terms of physical appearance is Jordan Fisher, who from Hamilton, he was on Dancing with the Stars and so on. I mean, he has kind of, not exactly the right look, but he's probably the closest I could find. However, I don't know that much about him as an actor. I haven't seen him in that much. So I don't know if, in terms of acting and delivery, he's the right fit. I have no idea. I know that in terms of acting and delivery, the actors that I would pick would be kind of a mashup of Joseph Gordon-Levitt and John Cusack.
Okay.
They have the level of... Joseph Gordon-Levitt has kind of the intensity that I would need for the role.
Yeah.
And John Cusack has kind of the comedic delivery, so if you could mash them up and make them 24 years old and multiracial, that would be kind of the perfect mix. So I don't know. If you know of an actor that fits that, I would very much like to hear about it, but the age is also really important for that character. He's got to be in his early 20s based on what is going on in his life and where the character is going to go. That age is important. So, I had difficulty with all four of the roles I was going to cast. So my villain, who I hesitate to call him a villain. Let's call him an antagonist.
Yeah, I was just going to say, let's call him an antagonist or maybe even an anti-hero.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
He's kind of an anti-hero.
Yeah.
He's not a full-on villain.
No. Mm-mm.
I agree with his ends. I don't agree with his means. That's the thing. And that's what I love about the dynamic between those two leads, is that they kind of agree about the ends. They just don't agree about the means. So that's why they're at odds with one another. But race is, again, very important to this character. He has to be black. Mm-hmm. He is of African descent. His parents were refugees. He grew up in the United States from the time he was 8, so most of his life he spent in the United States, but his parents were refugees, and that's important to the character. That's important to his worldview and why he's after the things he's after. So it has to be a black actor in their late 20s. And again, personality is important. This is a character who, he's angry, but it's not an explosive anger. He is not flying off the handle in a rage. He never raises his voice, and that's important to the character. Yeah. He doesn't scream. He doesn't shout. This is somebody who has turned his anger, his bitterness into fuel. It's driving him forward. So it has to be kind of a cold, seething, controlled anger, not an explosive rage.
Yeah.
The closest actor I could think of, and he would be perfect if he were younger, Idris Elba. If I could put him at 28 years old, he would be perfect. We've seen him do Luther. His performance in Luther could dovetail very easily into my main villain, Minka. But he's just not the right age, and that's what's so frustrating.
So what I'm hearing is you need a time machine.
I need a time machine. I also need a genetic splicer. But
I mean, that aside, you at least need a time machine.
Yeah. Yeah. So for my female lead, and this is not a romantic lead, this is the best friend of my main character. Her name is Michelle. She is also a superhero. I think Keke Palmer would be a good fit. She was Aquila and Aquila and the Bee. Yeah. She's on that show Star. She has the right look. I think she could pull off the character. It's kind of she is a very comforting, warm character. She's kind of the counter to my main character, Alex, which is why the two of them become best friends. Yeah. She's the counter to all of the anger and everything that Alex has in him. Nice. So she's kind of the comforting counterpart. And then for my mentor character, who Alex and the mentor hate each other. They need each other, but they hate each other. So the dynamic between the two of them has to be spot on. That would be a really important interaction. So we were laughing about this because when I was doing research, my Google search to try to find the right actor for this was old white men.
Yes.
So,
it was.
Yeah, that was my Google search.
Yep, pretty good.
You know, I kind of had some people in mind for this role already. I think the two that I landed on, and not that either of these men are really that old, but I'm just saying the Google search abused me.
Yes.
Neither of these men are that old, so if you happen to be listening, not that I necessarily think you would be, right. But if you happen to be listening, please don't take offense, because I'm actually a fan of both of you and your work. Kevin Costner and Bruce Willis.
Nice.
They both could pull off the intensity that role needs, and they both could pull off the animosity between those two characters. I really wanted to mess with, and Dr. Rice is the name of this character. I like both of them as actors in the sense that I think both of them are capable of pulling off controlled anger and intensity, and they have an authoritarian nature to them that they both, I think, could pull off. So that'd be my cast.
Nice. I think it's good.
But I had some more thoughts about who I would want behind the scenes working on my movie.
I can name probably 5 directors.
So if you want to sit this part out, it's
At
cool.
most.
If you want to sit this part out, it's cool. I have a couple names in mind. As director and as a screenwriter.
Holy cow, you even went to screenwriter?
Yeah, I went to screenwriter.
Holy moly.
Because I pay attention. So
I'm just going to sip my tea during this part of the podcast.
So behind the scenes, it would be important to me, a major part of the story is ostracization, feeling different, feeling like you don't fit in. It is the black experience in America. It is the multiracial experience in America. Those are major themes. Religion's a big theme too, but that's not the part that I want to focus on for this conversation. I think I landed on he's done directing, he's done producing, he's done writing. Reginald Hudlin. So he's mostly done, in terms of directing, he's mostly done TV. He has done shows like Psych. He's done a couple episodes of Psych. He has done episodes of the Bernie Mac Show. He has done episodes of Everybody Hates Chris. So he's been doing things for a long time. If I remember correctly, he directed the movie House Party from the early 90s.
Really?
I think so. I'm not 100% positive about that, but I mean, he's even done things like New Girl. He's done episodes of that.
Okay.
Modern Family.
Yeah.
So he's got a wide range of things that he's directed, mostly on the TV front. We've seen with recent Marvel movies that TV directors can become feature film directors successfully.
They can.
But the main reason why I picked him is because one of the only reasons we have a Black Panther movie is because of Reginald Hudlin. Reginald Hudlin put him and another writer named Christopher Priest put the black in Black Panther. They both wrote arcs of the character in comic books.
Okay.
And Reginald Hudlin was also a producer on the Black Panther cartoon, or the animated series, let's call it, that they had on TV a few years ago. But Reginald Hudlin was one of the writers that played a major role in Black Panther becoming the character that you saw in the movie, where he was very much focused on being an African king, separate from the Western world. And Christopher Priest was kind of the one who started that trend. By the way, Christopher Priest, if you are a comic fan at all and you have not read Christopher Priest's work, I strongly recommend you go read Christopher Priest's work. In my opinion, he did the best ever run on Black Panther. He did an amazing run on Black Panther. He also did the second best run on Deadpool, in my opinion.
Wow.
Yes. He wrote Deadpool, if I remember correctly, because this was like in the 90s. His run on Deadpool led directly into his run on Black Panther, if I remember the timing correctly. But second best run on Deadpool. He did amazing things with the character behind only Joe Kelly's run on Deadpool. But Christopher Priest is, in my opinion, one of the top 10 comic book writers of all time. He did some amazing things in Deadpool 2, about to come out in theaters.
Yes.
You can thank Christopher Priest in part for that, just like you can thank him in part for Black Panther. But anyway, Reginald Hudlin, I think, is who I want as my director. As my screenwriter, it needs to be Reginald, I think, working with a writer named Steve Pink. Steve Pink wrote Grosse Point Blank. He wrote Hot Tub Time Machine. He has the comedic, so he's worked with John Cusack. You know, I mentioned that John Cusack delivery. He's worked with John Cusack on High Fidelity as well. So he gets the comedic timing. He has the same kind of sense of humor that my main character has. So Steve Pink, Reginald Hudlin working together, I think they could do amazing things with my script and or my novel and adapting it into a screenplay. So those are my behind the scenes people.
Nice. My behind-the-scenes people are fuzzy little images of people. Because I have no idea who it would be. But
understood.
So I think this kind of, at least for me, leads me to wonder.
Yes.
How much control do you want?
Okay. So this is
or involvement. Control/involvement.
This is a complicated question for me, and I will try to keep this brief. But I don't remember if I've talked about this on the show before, but I grew up reading comic books and loving comic books. Comic books hold a special place in my youth, my formative years, because for me, comic books were one of the things that introduced me to a bigger world. It got me interested in science. Yes, comic books are pseudoscience. They greatly bend the laws of physics and thermodynamics and so on, but
we are not physicists.
We are not. That is correct. But they greatly bend those things, but it got me interested in that.
Yeah.
It got me interested in ideas of altruism, and they confronted like topics that were too big for my little mind. The X-Men were confronting racism. They were, and all of those kind of things. So it was exposing me to bigger ideas. I mean, I started reading comic books when I was 5, for God's sake. So they were exposing me to bigger ideas that I wasn't quite ready for, but they opened my mind to them. Now, the thing about comic books back then is you had the Comics Code Authority, which doesn't exist any longer, but it was a standard. It was based on moral standards. It came about in the 50s or 60s, and it limited what you could show in comic books. So you couldn't have a lot of adult language. You couldn't have, sex scenes. You couldn't have nudity. You could, if any comics that were under the Comics Code Authority, and all the major Marvel and DC comics were under that back then, so you couldn't have graphic violence. You couldn't have nudity. You couldn't have sex. You couldn't have graphic violence. So for me, that's very important that superheroes be accessible to kids. They open my mind. I would want my work to be accessible to kids and not feel like I'm corrupting innocence.
Yeah,
so
I get that.
I could give up control. I don't need to be on set every day, but I want my work to be accessible to kids. I want it to be, and look, I watch Tarantino movies and Kevin Smith movies. I play Mortal Kombat. I am not averse to adult language. I curse like a sailor, frankly. I have a foul mouth. I am not averse to violence and everything, but I don't want it in my superhero stuff. So, for me, it would be important finding a studio that's going to be respectful of the source material and respectful of that aspect of the source material. I don't want adult language. I don't want any nudity. I don't want sex scenes. There can be violence, but I don't want it to be graphic violence. There has to be violence because there's action scenes, there's fight scenes. That would be my level of involvement. Nice. That would have to be baked into any agreement I ever entered into with a studio. These things are off the table. They're completely off the table.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I could let go as long as I thought it was the right studio, the right executives, the right people behind the scenes to be respectful of it. The same way that Marvel Studios are respectful of the source material, they're not slavish to it.
Right.
You don't have to be slavish to every word I put on the paper, but you have to be respectful of the spirit.
Right, absolutely. No, I think that's a reasonable level of involvement. You're not asking to make decisions. You're not asking to stand there every day. I respect that.
I would love to be on the set just because I love movies, but if that's a deal breaker for the studio, okay, I'll back off. I'll just not get to live out my childhood dream, but whatever.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So what about you?
Yeah. So I think kind of in the same vein, I think that, I don't know that much. So for me, being involved would be cool just because I could learn a lot. But I would like just to see the integrity of the story preserved, the motivation of the characters be there organically. So for me, I don't need to be involved in casting. I don't need to be involved in every little thing. But I think I agree with you. I'd want kind of the little nuances of the character, the way my world builds and moves. That's really important to the story. So I kind of look at the movie world the same way I look at the playwriting world. And in college, I wrote plays. I had a couple plays produced when I was in college. And the only control you have are the things that your characters interact with. And so in playwriting at least, and so I kind of write that way a little bit. If there's something that's integral to my story or something that's integral to my characters, I make sure that they are forced to interact with it so that it would come with them wherever they go. I think I'm gonna make a comic book reference.
Oh wow. Ooh, exciting.
It's like you can't have Thor without his hammer. You know what I mean? And that's kind of how I build my characters. If there's something that they need, if there's a part of their personality that's really important, I make it so if you don't have them, you don't have that character. So yeah,
Got it.
So it's kind of that's how I always viewed it. Yeah.
So I have a question.
Uh-oh.
If they were to turn your novel into a movie, kind of going along with this idea of control, are there any scenes or characters or anything that you think would definitely not make it onto the screen?
There is one scene that jumps into my head, and the sad thing about it is it's a scene that I really, really love, but I love it because of what it I love it because of the timing, I think, but it's really not all that important to the overall story. You know, it's like it's one of those things where if it ended up on, I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't there. It's a conversation between Rex and Christopher, and then they're in this kind of old school diner, and it's a conversation between Rex and the waitress there. And I really like where it falls in the story. I like the perspective it gives you on Rex, and I like the way that it opens Christopher's eyes to his history, like to Rex's history, but it's not necessary. The information comes up again. It's repeated kind of throughout, so there are other ways that it could be worked in, but I think that scene would go, which is, again, it hurts. Yeah. Because I love it. Characters that would go, I don't think any of I think my major characters would be preserved. I don't really have, you know? Yeah. And if it's a side character, I'm not too worried about it because just little spurts, you know? I don't necessarily think Anna's mother would be in it, you know? Yeah. Like, that kind of a thing. So, yeah.
All right. So, for mine, there's one scene that I'm 98% positive is gone, and it really guts me that there's two scenes that I think would probably go. I'm more confident that this first one would go. It's kind of similar to what you were saying. It's my main character Alex and his best friend Michelle, and it's the two of them sitting in a coffee shop talking. Now, they're there for a purpose. They're there trying to kind of stake out the apartment building of one of the villains in the story. So they're trying, I mean, there is a purpose to the scene, but it's really the two of them talking about motivations and, you know, where they see things going from there and everything. And it guts me that it would be cut because, as everyone knows from listening to our show, I'm a plotter. There's a character who shows up in the background of that scene. They have like one line of dialogue. They're totally a background character, but they show up repeatedly, and you don't realize how important they are until the fifth novel. So they show up in this five.
He
that's
said
right.
Fifth.
Yes, the fifth novel.
Yes, he did.
You don't even realize that this character matters until the fifth novel, but they're there in the very first one. So it guts me that. It's one of those things that until you get to novel 5, and then you look back like, oh my God, they were there the whole time, kind of thing. Right. And that scene would probably be cut because it's not integral to the story. It's just character building. The other one that I think would be cut is a flashback sequence of my antagonist that it's important to the story, but I don't know how you would do it in a movie and drive home the points that you need to drive home.
Makes sense.
So I could easily see them cutting it. Other than the one line, there's one line that's uttered in that scene that gets repeated later, so that's important. But I think they would probably work that in somewhere else and cut the scene. So those would be my scenes. I think we're about done, but I do have one rapid fire question for you.
Okay, rapid fire.
This is rapid fire.
Rapid fire. First thing that comes to my head.
Novels. This is a 3-part question, but it's quick answers. It's quick answers.
I don't know if I can do this.
Best adaptation of a novel into a movie, worst adaptation of a novel into a movie, and novel or series that you would like to see turned into movies.
Okay, I can do this. For me, the best book to movie adaptation was Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
I adored it.
Okay.
So, yes, Lord of the Rings. Worst would be Ender's Game. Probably for the disappointment factor.
So we're going to agree on worst.
And what I would like to see turned into a movie. Okay, I'm going to plug an author here. Carol Berg. She's one of my favorite authors. She's out of Colorado. You don't hear about her too much, but she writes fantasy. And she has 2 novels that I would love to see turned into movies. They are Flesh and Spirit and Breath and Bone. Okay. I'm pretty sure those are the right order of those words. If I got them backwards, I'm sorry, Carol. But those are the ones that I would really enjoy seeing turned into movies. Okay.
So, my answers. Best adaptation, I'm going to go with Blade Runner. It was an adaptation of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, Philip Dick. It is not slavish to all the plot points. You cut out Mercerism, you cut out Buster Friendly, and so on. But for me, it was slavish to the core of the work. It was slavish to the spirit of the work. So I'm going to go with Blade Runner. For worst, Ender's Game. We agreed because I love that novel.
I love it. Yeah.
The movie just didn't embody it. Honestly, there was an old movie from the 80s, The Last Starfighter, that I think was a better adaptation. Even though it was silly and everything else, it wasn't a pure adaptation. I think that was a better adaptation of Ender's Game than the actual Ender's Game movie. For ones that I would like to see, I'm going to do these really quickly, but it's several. The Dresden Files, which was already a TV show that was amazing, and it got canceled after one season. It should have gone longer. Might work better as a TV series than a movie series. There was a series of bodyguard novels by Greg Rucka called, it was Atticus Kodiak was the main character. I really enjoyed those. I think, again, those would make for good movies. I've mentioned on past episodes Tamara Seiler Jones's series about Dubrig Byerly. I would love to see that turned into a movie, medieval forensics with magic and, you know, forensic medicine. And then my last one that I'm going to mention, this is another one that might be better as a TV series than a movie series, but Kim Harrison's Hollows series, excuse me. It's about Rachel Morgan is the main character, and she's a witch and a bounty hunter. It's kind of similar to the True Blood, the Sookie Stackhouse by Charlaine Harris, but I preferred... I shouldn't say this. I've never read the Charlaine Harris novels, but from what I know of them, it felt like the Hollows books were more up my alley, and they're based out of Cincinnati, so yeah! Woo! So that's it. There's my rapid fire.
Nice.
My pseudo rapid fire.
Good morning.
All right, so there's our movie episode outlets. Go check us out on Twitter. Check out our new Plug Yourself hashtag game. Check out past episodes. Check out our individual websites. You could read my bio like I talked about. Check out Samantha's just for the writing, SamanthaTheWriter.com.
Just because.
JGeorgeWriting.com. We'll see you at the movies.
Woo! Yeah. Bye, outlets.
Bye.